Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, which is focused on the Notes application strategy, with especially when mail is migrating. I'm Gayatri. People call me Guy. I started my career with IBM and Domino a long time back, and these days I work with multiple technologies. I head technology at Maarga. And Rekha.
Hi everyone, so this is Rekha. So I'm an SME for Notes migration. So I used to work on different projects where we have did migrations to different technology, and I used to report guides. Yeah, that's a quick intro about me.
Thanks, Rekha. So just a quick introduction to Maarga. We've been in business for almost 14 years, working across multiple countries. We've worked extensively with IBM products as well as Microsoft products and partners with both. And today's webinar is primarily about sharing our experiences about what's been happening in this world and what our experience has been with the Notes applications, especially when we focus on the mail being migrated out. So before we start specifically, we would like to have a quick poll just to understand the different kinds of people who are attending today's webinar. So if there's some customization we can do, we could do that. So Scott, could you run the first poll, please?
Okay, the first poll is up on the screen, so we would appreciate your participation. Organization, is it an IT management role, technical specialist in IBM Notes, or a technical specialist in Office 365, IT administration, or other roles? So we already have over 70% of us voting. That's great. We do appreciate this participation, and we are going to share the results here, so you'll understand who your colleagues are on the webinar as well. Okay, I'm going to share the results. So 7% of us are in general IT management role. 79% of us are IBM Notes technical specialists. Other IT administration role at 7%, and then others at 7% as well. So the majority of us are IBM Notes specialists.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. So let's focus specifically. What's been happening is, especially over the last couple of years, significantly seen that, of course, email has been a commodity for some time now, but there's been a lot of migration of email from on-prem Domino servers over to Office 365. And a lot of our customers come back and ask, what do I do with the applications? Because almost every one of our customers who have had Domino email have also had Domino applications, some with small infrastructures, small set of applications, some with very large set of applications like 4,000, 5,000 applications, or some with even larger. Now, almost every single time the question that gets asked is, what do I do with applications? And even before that question gets asked, the question is also, what kind of applications do I have? Because that's probably where people start. And so today's agenda is going to discuss about analyzing your application portfolio, how to go about it, what is the methodology, then also a little bit of a discussion on what are people, do they retain some applications Domino, how are they managing, a little bit of discussion on that. Specifically about analysis tools, as well as some challenges that you could end up seeing, especially if you choose to migrate, and how do you kind of plan for that, and how do you kind of like analyze the risks and manage those risks. So that's what we'll try and cover in today's agenda. So pretty much the thing is, everyone knows this. Mail migration today has become fairly standardized. Yes, very large organizations, when they go through it, go for a very planned as well as phased migration of their different teams, and by and large, it's a success. But when it comes to applications, the very first step is to kind of understand what do you have, because there have been cases where they've had, say, thousands of applications, and probably fully 50% of those applications haven't been used in the last 3 years. And the other 50%, there are few very, very critical applications being used so regularly that they have to be watched carefully, and then a home has to be found for those. But there are about 30% of applications. It's okay if you manage to give something similar, people are kind of comfortable with it. So there are many, many ranges that happen, but without having a clear analysis, it's always very difficult to decide what to do with your application platform, what is a reasonable expectation. And one of the key things that we notice is typically the infrastructure team that's been supporting the Domino platform, once mail migrates, they start putting, they kind of come back and say, you know what, now that we've kind of migrated mail, how long do you want us to keep the application service running? Or they give an ultimatum saying, you know what, I would like to keep them running only for another year or two for support. After that, I'm going to not have both the platforms running. So these kind of issues do come into play, and that's where it's important to know. And a good analysis directly impacts the timeline. It impacts the overall cost, because you kind of have a very good understanding of the scope of what you need to do. It reduces your risk, because there are known challenges, there are known cases where it's a good idea. There have been a couple of very complex kind of applications. A good idea was to just leave them back in nodes, run the Domino servers for a few years, and then very gently phase them out, rather than just even not taking a chance with migrating this. So definitely you can quantify the risks and take decisions based on those factors. And of course, understanding what kind of challenges you could face based on the complexity of your application portfolio. So it's fairly important. What we have seen is to have a comprehensive insight into your application portfolio before you embark on any such thought process of what do I do with my applications. So what are those factors? And we've kind of distilled it into a few set of factors that affect this kind of an analysis. The key factors that we see, the very first one is usage. And to be very honest, we did have one of the customers who said, you know what, let's see what really happens if I just turn off access to a huge set of applications, and let me find out really who's using this. If at all someone comes and asks me, then I'll give access. Well, that worked for them because they were a mid-sized company that didn't have anything majorly critical, but may not work for organizations that have fairly critical applications running, business critical applications running on Domino servers. So it's important to understand the usage. And as you all know, because I see nearly 80% of the people coming from a nodes background, you know that there is data available between the application on the database itself, when you look at the usage, between the nodes log and the database catalog. There is a lot of information available, but it's all scattered in different places. So Rekha would, in the course of time, talk about what are the different parameters you can consider to kind of narrow down a clear report on what is really the usage of the applications. And obviously, it has a direct impact on scope, because the number of applications that you can bring down by saying, hey, these have not been used and they have not been used for quite some time, it automatically reduces the kind of work that you need to do on them. The second one is on complexity. So we all know that some Domino applications can become very, very complex. And in the past, obviously, applications can also have design which has been carried over from much earlier, like versions. There have been applications that were built in version 5 and never got updated, and they are still running in version 8.5.3 and things like that. And so this is a reality, or it may not be the entire application. There will be some parts of it that's old, some parts of it is just very complex because of the way it's been architected, and 90% of the time you would not find any kind of documentation around the Domino application. It's probably been, what, Rekha, maybe one or two cases where we've seen any kind of decent documentation that we've got, but most of the time it says, you know what, the person who developed it has left the company. We don't know what it is about. And the third one is the dependencies that these applications have with each other, not only within the Domino environment, but across the organization, because most of these application portfolios tend to become complex over time. They tend to have integrations like with, say, SAP or we see influence this overall analysis. So let's take a quick poll again. Where are you in your migration journey? So Scott, let's take a look at that.
Okay, the second poll is up on your screens now. So where are you in your migration journey? Are you preparing to migrate? You've migrated mail, but working on your application strategy. Your application migration is in progress, or applications are migrated and working on rollout, or are you planning to continue to use IBM Notes? Give us about 4 or 5 more seconds here to vote. Don't be afraid of that mouse. Go ahead and grab it and give a vote. And then I'll share the results. All right, let me go ahead and share the results of where we're at. So of those participating in the poll, 69% are preparing to migrate, 19% have migrated the mail, but working on the application strategy. And then the rest of us, 13% are planning to continue to use IBM Notes.
Great. So looks like most of you are in the almost 70% planning to migrate, which is a good state for you to understand why this and how can you go about in terms of the analysis and what you can do with it. So I'm going to turn it over to Rekha. Rekha, if you can walk everyone through the details of the analysis and how things typically happen.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gayatri. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a walkthrough how this usage analysis in detail will help you to understand your applications that you are having on your Domino server. So people will be using a lot of applications and in the catalog, so we can just consolidate all those from across all the servers. We'll have more servers in your environment, so you have to consolidate all the databases, and then you have to follow certain steps so that you can narrow down and arrive at a final number list of databases. So after you have the consolidated list, you need to really identify the unique replicas. So as nodes, applications will be creating the replicas in many servers to address, like based upon the regions usage, all those stuff. So we need to really identify the replicas, and we need to filter out all the archive databases, logs, and development DBs, which was used by the development team or support team. So all these needs to be filtered out. And then the instances. So if at all we have created anything for any other reporting purpose or something like that internally used, so that needs to be taken off. Also the mail DBs. So if you already migrated the mail DBs, that has to be taken out, or is there any mailing DBs that has integrated with the applications, so that if it's not really required, you just need to filter out that DBs as well. And finally, so we have to filter out the activity databases, admin, some of the default databases. That's also like audit, that database also we need to filter out from the consolidated list. And the backups, the old versions, we might have, like, we used to move the changes to some of the applications, so we will be maintaining all the templates, backups with data, without data, so all that databases instances also we need to take it out. And finally, we'll be like having a list, and we need to really don't, we sometimes will not be aware whether the databases still exist in a specific path. Maybe we'll just get it from the catalog and the other logs, but from specified path. So we need to validate really all these databases are exist. And we need to also check with the admin team because they would have created some monitoring databases for server performance or some agent scheduling. So that kind of internal applications they might use. So we don't need to really consider them for the migration. So we need to check out that, so that these steps will finally give some list of databases so that we can arrive at a number, and then we can start. Actually, this is the number of databases that I'm planning to migrate.
So yeah, Rekha, on this also, we also look at the databases that are being really used, right?
Yeah.
In terms of people who are using these applications.
Who, like, so as Gayatri said, we can also come to know that how frequently these databases are accessed by the user. Say for like last 1 month, which is the database that is highly used, and number of users use that particular database. So all these things also we will come to know when we do this usage analysis, so that we can quickly decide which database we will take first to migrate based upon the usage. So that things can be arrived by using this usage analysis. So I'm just moving on to next thing. So after doing this usage analysis, what is the next step that you can take after you decide the 30 applications example you are arriving at? So probably you need to identify what are the other databases that is not really used. So we have two things to it. So one is like really heavily used applications, and the other set which is not at all used. So the not used applications, or like if you have identified any specific application, so this is something already taken to a different platform, so you need to really archive those applications. So you can, this usage analysis will give you that result. So you can identify the applications to be archived. So for that, we need to do some set of activities. So really you need to designate a server to hold all the archive applications, and you need to set some control, so like access only to admin group or some set of people who can access that archive server. So that setups you need to do. And finally, like we need to set up some procedures so that, say for example, you have a ticketing system in your organization. So every time when people say we are not using the system, you can go ahead and archive. So we need to set up some procedures that needs to be followed. So which team needs to take care of this kind of archival procedure, and how it will be executed. So they have to move to that archival server, and they need to make sure it is accessible by the users. If some cases, if they need a report out of that archival database, and some sort of references they might need in the future. So we need to do a thorough testing also before we conclude the procedure. And finally, if it could be nice, like if you have an SOP, system operating procedure, defined for this archival procedure. So this is one of the process that you can come out after the usage analysis in detail. So the next thing I just wanted to discuss about the challenges that you will face when you do a usage analysis. So I have just listed out some factors here. So like out of usage analysis, identifying the common usage of applications, we might have a challenge. So for example, you have a database where you have one export that is happening, but it could be, rarely used export, whereas in other databases, it will be heavily used for export. So these kind of applications, you can actually group it. So all this is coming under, reporting applications and workflow applications you can group. So you can categorize really based upon this usage analysis. So it will help you to identify, but you have to consider all the functionalities that is there. So probably that could be a challenge for you to, identify. And also the unused functions or modules. So the database, probably it will be heavily used by some set of users, but there could be some of the particular functionalities or modules that are not really used in the database. So there could be an export to Excel will be there, or export to PDF. Export to PDF no one would have used. So that is not a module that you need to migrate. So, but this cannot be completely, extracted from the usage analysis. It needs some time to go through. Specifically, the database analysis will help you to get this. Also, the usage analysis will have a challenge like where we have to archive the dependencies. So the dependency databases will not be used by most of the users, but still, for the critical applications that's to perform well, we need some of the dependency databases. Say, for example, there could be a keyword database which will have a mapping of just pulling the cost centers or regions or something. Some common keywords will be maintained in one database, but there will be not any usage. So that we cannot arrive at, okay, we can archive this keyword database. So, but it really matters, like all of the other applications will be referring this particular DB for fetching the cost center or some vital information. So we need to look at all these aspects before we doing archival stuff. And the other thing, rarely used applications will be there. Say, for example, you have some applications where you will generate some audit reports. So probably every quarter you use to access the application, do some updates, and you will just pull out the reports. So it doesn't mean that it is not, rarely used, but it plays an important role probably for a finance team or a HR team to, generate such reports. So you need to consider all these factors when you do a usage analysis. Also, we need to include the, some of the activity from the support team and the SME who is driving this migration process. Also, sometimes we need to get involvement of business team to get their comments. Are they really going to use the same kind of applications going forward, or are they? What is the usability? There could be a change in the department who is going to use similar applications. So this will help to, come across these challenges. So that's the thing about usage analysis challenges. So the next topic that we are going to discuss about the complexity analysis. So complexity analysis. So as a nodes users, we always, assess the database by its design size, like how heavily it is having the design elements, how many forms it has, how many views, how many agents. So it's not a complete measure to assess the complexity, but it's a key indicator for us to assess. So so I just listed out here how a low, a medium, and a high complexity application will be looking like. So a low complexity application will have just 1 or 2 simple forms and 4 views and 1 agent, could be a simple agent. So that we can, probably put categorize under low complexity. The medium applications are like will have some 10 to 15 forms and like 100 views and 30 agents and some of script libraries. So but nothing like vital critical functionality will not be involved. It's just a view, probably the first column or something will be changed. So so that will come under medium, but it's still the effort of migrating this application could be vary, so it will come under the medium. So when a high complex application,
there could be very less forms, less few internal dependencies. Probably it will connect to a different nodes database and pulling some information, or the reports might be go to an SAP interface, or it would need business object reports to generate some of the internal updates. So we need to identify the functionality sometimes to decide this complexity. So this will help us to categorize the applications that we derive from the usage. So that's about complexity analysis.
So on this topic, I just wanted to add one thing. Also, when you do this complexity analysis, tools do help, and it's important for you to kind of consider the fact that some applications will have copies of the same forms. So if the design element, I mean, it could be whether with very minor differences between the forms or the views. And I'm sure we've seen enough applications where you would have, it's the same view, it's just either the selection criteria which is slightly different, or the selection criteria is exactly the same, it's just the sorting or the categorization of the column is a little different, and you would have a set of views like this. So these are very common in notes applications. So it's important that when we take this complexity analysis into consideration, to kind of club these, because really, if I had 20 views, the only difference being the selection criteria slightly different, maybe like, for different departments, I've created one view for each of these departments for whatever reason. Now, it really doesn't mean that suddenly this particular application becomes a highly complex application. There is a balance between that. And that's precisely what Rekha was also talking. Some of these high complexity applications, but in fact, we've seen a very, very complex application which had only 2 forms, whereas those are very critical, as well as, had a lot of dependencies from many different applications, as well as some of the data was being pushed into a relational database. So such stuff automatically makes it complex, especially when you start considering which platform it needs to go to. That's when this analysis of complexity makes a difference in deciding what am I going to do with this.
So we'll also see the challenges that what we will end up when you do a complexity analysis. So though we talked about the design will help us to categorize under the complexity low, medium, or high, but it's not always we need to decide based upon the design. We need to, take the help of the support or development team really to understand what it really does and how it is important for the business to, for a process or for whatever the day-to-day activities that is getting involved. So definitely we need to decide it by only the design. Also, we need to group applications with small difference in it. So what Gayatri was mentioned. So there could be a small differences with respect to the applications, but we need to group it so that we can identify to which platform this group of applications can be migrated. So that is one thing. And the other thing, based upon the internal and external dependency, so probably we need to talk to different teams to get this understanding. So if it is an SAP or something, you're giving an export from your current application, the format could be complex while you generate that export. So what is that, and how complex the reports are, and what are the other inputs that we are getting from different interfaces to run the nodes application. So these kind of understanding, that will also be a challenge. We really don't know when we were using for long years, but when we do this migration activity, we really need to know from where the data are coming and where it is going really out of nodes. And the other interfaces, what we talked about earlier. So all these things will be challenged when we really do the complexity analysis. So, and also we need to get support from the support team, and we need to use some tools also. So later, some point of this webinar, we'll be discussing about the tools which help to easily carry out this complexity analysis.
that we will be discussing later. So that will also we will use to understand the complexity. And also we need to take some help from the other teams so that it will be easily we can easily figure it out all the issues. So before moving to next topic, we want to have a poll question. Scott, can you take over?
Okay, we're going to do our third and final poll. So this poll is all about you. What matters most to you? Do you want to avoid end-user disruption while migrating Notes apps? Do you want to maintain apps and reduce support costs? Do you want to find a suitable vendor to manage and migrate the Notes apps for you? And are you looking to drive adoption to Office 365 and reduce IBM Notes footprint, or none of the above? A lot of thought going into this question here. We have just over 30% of us voting, over 40% now. This question, we may have caught you off guard here, but this is a great poll question to kind of understand where we might take the webinar next. Okay, so we're over almost 70% voted. Just gonna give 3 more seconds. Then I'll share the results. All right, so 36% of the respondents say avoiding end-user disruption while migrating Notes apps is the most important thing to them. 14% maintaining Notes apps and reduce support costs. 7% looking for a vendor to manage and migrate the Notes apps. 57% looking to drive adoption of 365 and reduce the Notes footprint. And 14% of us trying to hold on as long as we can and probably don't have any directive to migrate. So very diverse audience today.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah.
Okay, the slides are back to you.
Okay. Fine. So yeah, so the next, so from the poll results, we have understood that most of the expectation is from how we have to do the adoption for using this applications or migration stuff. Fine. So let me continue with the dependency analysis. So the factors that you are seeing, so all these have major roles in the dependency analysis. So we have to know the internal dependency that is happening first. What are the lookups that we need to identify? But what I was referred earlier, the keywords basically, or either it is coming from a different Domino database, we need to look at it. And also the external dependency from like different sources, that also we need to consider. And in Domino, like in LEA jobs, that is something, a key factor that if you are like running any LEA jobs, that also we need to consider when you do a dependency analysis, because we need to plan for that, how we are going to do it in after you migrating to a different platform. And also the web services, which talks to different things, so we can really need to see whether we are going to do in the same way or how we are going to address this in the new technology. So that is one of the key factors. And also we need to see is there any embedded language scripts. So this is for, I know the attendees are more technically available today, so I think most of you can understand. So how each factor, very important for the dependency analysis. So this will actually, give a sense of also how we can bring out the remove the dependency so that we can move it to a specific platform. So the challenges that we will end up when you do the dependency analysis, like this analysis particularly will take some time, so that you can you need to spend a lot of time on how the interfaces are giving inputs or taking some reports from nodes. So it needs some manual analysis times. So probably you need to get more support from the development or support team. And also the availability of other teams is a challenge here. So that team will not be available probably for the frequent discussion. So maybe need to set some frequent times to get the input from them and how they will process the data. So that understanding need to be, get from the availability of other teams. And the lack of environment. So we will not have all the databases in our development environment. So whenever we have a specific change or design changes, we used to set up all the development setup for us. So we will not have all the environments. So this will be a challenge. So without analysis, we cannot identify the dependencies. So it is must to have at least while doing the migration, we need to identify the key applications, and we need to have a development environment set up. This will take a bit time, but it will give you the complete understanding of the application. And as Gayatri was saying, like somebody would have developed the application and they would have left the organization. So we don't know how the way they developed and what are the functionalities involved. There will be no documentation or functional requirements available for the particular application. So all these challenges we will be coming up when we do the dependency analysis. So this involves the participation of architects and other technical teams and our support or development teams. So these are the teams who will be participating on doing this dependency analysis. Yeah. So as I said, so all these analysis manually, if we do, definitely it is going to be a time-taken process. So Gayatri will be taking you what are the tools that will help you to easily do all this stuff. Yes, Gayatri.
Yeah, so we've seen multiple commercially available tools. So these help in analyzing your application portfolio and coming up with this understanding of their usage, the complexity, the dependencies of these applications with other platforms and everything. So the tools that we've seen, and there are others as well, is Panagenda has a tool called Application Insights. Team Studio, which again is a company that is well known, Panagenda is also well known. They have a tool called Advisor, and Casal has a application suite. Now, the key thing about these tools is typically they run as and they kind of pull together all the data and provide you with dashboards that help you with an insight into your entire application portfolio. Just to take a quick look, we have run the applications insights from Panagenda, and here's a quick dashboard that tells you across the different servers, there are about 444 database instances, and then how many were really used in the last 90 days. This is part of the usage analysis, and then it also gets you specifics, and you can start looking at the complexity as well as the design dependencies as well. So these are kind of gives you a visually able to see what exactly is your application portfolio looking like. And here's our, as what Rekha was saying, right? She talked about design elements, the number of design elements that are there, and also the kind of coding languages that are there. She was talking about embedded scripts, and especially older Node applications, if you see, are likely to have JavaScript embedded right inside the forms and inside a view template default and things like that. So it'll all be mixed up. And so obviously such applications, there is no one-size-fits-all click of a button migrate available. And when we look at the different organizations and see what do they do after getting this kind of an analysis, after understanding these dependencies, after understanding the usage, if we start looking at what do people do with the Nodes applications, we see that there are 2-3 typical kind of responses that we have seen. there are organizations that are saying, look, we know it is going to be hard and we know it's going to take time, and instead of rushing through this, let me take my own timeline before we really have to migrate. And so they decide to continue with the nodes infrastructure for apps. So in those cases, they definitely do a server consolidation. So they don't necessarily keep running with the entire set of suite of servers. And then they do a remediation exercise and a quick check to see that just because mail has migrated, and we've seen organizations that have very, very tight integrations with mail, right? Right from inside the email inbox, they would be starting off workflows, or they would be pulling data from emails and putting it into, say, a CRM system. Things like these, very tight integration along with email. So they do check, they make sure that nothing is going to get broken because of mail migration, and there's a clear process for that. And then they say, okay, let me retain my apps in my nodes environment. So that's one type of response. Quite a lot of organizations say, hey, I would like to have a clear time period. I want to retire my nodes applications. And one of the companies that we worked with decided that by and large, most of their applications they will migrate, but they're not going to migrate saying it's like, 1:1. Let me just take the exact functionality from nodes and then build it on SharePoint. That's not what they did. What they first did was just to kind of make sure all the applications were accessible through a web browser, and then consolidated and moved them off into a utility server. And then based on the kind of changes that people are requesting, when people request for enhancements, and if there is a particular application that kind of keep getting enhancement requests, keep getting support requests, those were taken on priority for the entire migration exercise, rather than kind of do a big bang migration of all applications. And one of the newer trends that we are seeing is also not, and this is kind of new, even probably in the last year, we've started seeing this trend. Earlier, the trend used to be, and especially Microsoft customers would pick SharePoint and say, okay, can I migrate as many as possible into SharePoint? It used to be a quite common refrain. Whereas recently, what we are seeing is a different model, where they say, let's group applications. And once we group these applications, let's find the best in class. It could be a SaaS platform. It could be a PaaS kind of a platform, maybe running on Azure, maybe running on Java. But if there is a platform that kind of fits this need. So for example, we've seen organizations that connect anything that's similar to working with service requests. Not necessarily just customer service requests, or not necessarily just IT requests or something like that, but anything that can be categorized as service requests and moving them all into something like ServiceNow or Remedy. So these kind of models are coming into play these days. And of course, SharePoint and Microsoft do remain as one of the popular platforms, especially for workflows, collaborations, and kind of like, the wraparound applications, as we call it, when the core business process is probably in, say, a ERP, and then you want, wraparound applications that just kind of provide you with ability to sync with it, kind of pull reports out of, or do a workflow and then push report documents into it. Things like these, we find SharePoint continues to be a very popular platform also for collaboration. Okay, so before we go on to the specifics of data and some of the migration challenges and things like that, we wanted to have an open discussion. And Scott, if people can post it on the chat, that would be good. Because one of the key things that we are noticing is it's again a new trend compared to what it was earlier. Earlier, most people said, hey, can we migrate the data? Can we have at least the last quarter's data? Things like that. But the trend that we are seeing now is people are taking a very conscious decision about data. And this is especially true after the SharePoint Online migration that has come in, especially when people are directly moving to cloud. there is a question being asked, do we really need all the data in the new platform? So some of the starter reasons that I've given, because maybe you have mandatory retention policies and things like that. So would love to hear from you. If you can post it on the chat, and we would read that out so that for the benefit of other attendees as well. Feel free to, I'll give probably about 30 seconds to a minute for people to share, and then we will go specifics into what you can do with the data and what are people doing with data as well.
Okay, brilliant. So if you want to participate in this, go ahead and just put it into the chat window of the GoToWebinar, and that will come up into the areas where everyone can see. So just post that comment, and you can go from there. So what, again, the question is, what do you plan to do with data, and why would you migrate data? Okay, looks like we're a little bit shy today.
Okay, so we'll move on.
This is kind of a new wrinkle for most of the webinar attendees.
I know. We were trying this out as well for the first time today. Normally we just do a poll. So, but some of the things that we are seeing is it's primarily if people wanted, because it's mandated, and you don't want it to be on notes, and for some reason you really want all the data in the new platform. We do see it's mandated because of statutory reasons and things like that. They migrate the data. Sometimes it's needed for some of the analytics that you would like to conduct on the existing data. But there is a trend that we see that not all data has been migrated. People are becoming more and more selective about what they really want to migrate and how they really want to conduct when they are moving forward.
Yeah, Guy, we are getting responses. That actually they're putting them into the questions area, so that's fine. Thank you very much for everyone who's done that. I can see that come in just now. So yeah, so a couple of them come in and said they are mandatory, retention policies. So data retention. Frank has responded saying, hey, there are certain laws and legal requirements they have to consider. Another respondent are talking about, we have a very complex environment. So almost all of the bullets that you've listed are applicable to them, and why they would need to migrate data. So this is great. Yeah, so it is. I mean, there's each company is going to have one, but I think data retention is probably going to be, high on everyone's list.
Yeah. So one thing that we have noticed with one of our customers is they kind of set up a Domino server that was just meant for data retention with very limited access, but with a clear SOP on if someone needed access because of, for example, this particular organization had some kind of healthcare connection. So obviously healthcare needs have very high data retention policies. But what they decided to do was not to migrate the data, but keep their Domino server. I think they just retained 1 or 2 only for this case, and then put SOPs in place as to how and who could access the data. So that was interesting because they chose that they decided they didn't want to migrate the data into a new platform and kind of take the hassle of validating the data and ensuring data quality. Instead, they would rather retain it inside Domino, and then but let's just do it in 1 or 2 servers. So those could be ideas as well that you could take. So when you look at some of the challenges that happen, these are both technical, non-technical, and by and large, this is regardless of the platform that you move to. Typically, you would see that from a technical perspective, what comes very easily in notes, especially things like scheduled agents, subforms, multiple subforms, computed subforms, and things like that aren't so easy when you are looking at the functionality in some of the other platforms. So it takes a little bit of, and one of the key things that we have started advocating is to look at the best practices of the target platform and rebuild the application, rather than just think about migrating your existing notes application, because some of these which you have as functionality in notes is not there in the new platform, A, and B, it doesn't kind of map too well. Instead, thinking of it as a fresh application in the target platform might give you better ideas of implementing the same functionality or even bettering the functionality. And one of the critical things that we also notice, and this goes specifically against these three areas. One is computed for display fields. And again, I'm using these because I know this target audience has 80% people who have been putting their hands into notes. They know what these are about. And these, from a user perspective, are sometimes very critical. They see the data in front of their eyes, but then really the data is not there in the Domino backend. So trying to figure that out and how to capture the data and bring it in is definitely something that people think about. Datetime fields, we had a customer who had their datetime stored as string. Bad idea, but then that's what they did. Whereas bringing it over to a platform like SharePoint Online, and it didn't have to be, it shouldn't be date, it should be date in the new platform, and that's important. So it meant quite a bit of data mapping and rules and things like that to kind of handle the situation. And overall, when you look at data migration, data quality is something that has to be addressed and handled. So this slide quickly lists some of the key areas on data quality. It's important to look at the accuracy and the completeness overall. And some of the common pitfalls we've seen is, as I said, the date format that we talked about, language support, especially for multinational organizations which have European languages or kanji support and things like that. Time zones, quite often whether you use a tool or not, and most often you would be using a tool for data migration because that's one of the best practices, but then handling these time zones is important, making sure those are mapped properly. And also things like sometimes you'll end up finding text that has unsupported characters. Not just rich text, but sometimes just the form fields may have unsupported characters, and you would need some kind of cleansing of this data before it goes into the target platform. So one thing that we are noticing again is an interesting way of handling this is when your new application is ready, to kind of have a period when both applications are running parallelly. All new requests go into the new application, the freshly built migrated application, so to speak, and all the existing requests and existing workflows, possibly the existing data, stays back in the old, and both are parallelly running. And at the end of the year or a specific period, time period, you kind of cut off the old application, just move what is necessary, and then go live with the new application. It also allows for adoption, and it allows a period of time allowing the users to ask for any questions and things like that. So before we go on to the conclusion, where we are talking a little bit about estimations, Scott, if you can post the feedback, because we would really love to hear from you, how useful this webinar was, and so that we can also plan about our next topics and share what we know in this area of migration. So would love to hear from the audience. Scott, can you post the link for the feedback?
Yep, I've just done that. So everyone, if you look at the chat area, I've just posted a link in there, and that will give you a chance to do a short survey. And again, this guy is saying that that will help maybe give some direction for a future webinar. All right, so hopefully everyone will be able to see that. Again, it's in the chat window, so if you just expand the chat area, you will see the link. And then, as mentioned here on the screen, if you complete that survey, you will get a copy of the free data checklist. So if you are not getting this, or if you can't find it, raise your hand and let me know.
I'll wait for another 20 seconds before I move on. Okay, so just to conclude, one of the key things that we keep getting asked is, how long does it take? And obviously, my answer would be, it depends. But this is more like a modeling of what we have seen. And the target platform in all these cases is considering SharePoint as the target platform. So some of the low complexity applications, and the complexity being how Rekha had defined it, 1 or 2 forms with a few views with hardly nothing more than just a keyword lookup. The key thing to note here is that even for such a small application, you would probably end up needing at least a day of the business, because you need them to validate that the new application is in line with what they were doing earlier, A, and B, it's important for you to keep to the scope. Quite often what we see is business would come and say, can you just make sure that this application works in SharePoint? Fair enough, you were, as an IT person, you say, yes, we can get that done. But then, after you get it done, the question would be, but I thought I would also have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, which would not have been part of your scope. So it's important to kind of, agree the scope upfront and make sure that what you deliver is the same scope. So even for a very small application, that you might need some involvement from business. So this is kind of a model more than an exact number, but some very low complexity applications can be migrated and be ready for rollout or go live in about a week. The key thing is to note for the high complexity applications, and this is where we've seen our customers kind of say that I'll take it up only when business asks for enhancements. It's because any of these high complexity applications would need business involvement, both upfront and as well as for the final reviews and UATs and things like that. And when you kind of combine it with some push that they have in terms of enhancements, they would be more readily available to take up. Or if you add a few more functionality in the target platform that would be helpful for them, they would be more ready to spend the time, invest the time, and actually give you the feedback and be happy with your application later. So this is more of a modeling of, at least in the mind, to know what is it going to be to kind of migrate these low, medium, or high complexity applications. So that, with that, we do have about a couple of minutes for questions. So Scott, if you want to open up for questions.
Okay, perfect. We do have a couple of questions already loaded up. And just remember that if you want to ask a question now, go ahead and type that into the questions section, and we'll get that done. So first question is, of the 3 products you mentioned before, is there one that you would favor over the others for larger organizations?
Okay.
For the analysis part.
Let me put it this way. There are multiple factors that come into play in terms of picking a particular product. Personally, we have worked with application insights. We've also looked into Team Studio Advisor, and both work well with very large organizations because especially applications insights, we've seen collect data over a period of time, and it kind of pulls data into their own data warehouse and showcases some very useful reports is what I would say. But when, as an organization, if you're looking to invest in such a tool, you would want to look at licensing. Some of them are licensed per server, some of them are licensed by the number of applications, unique applications that they are analyzing. You would also look at how much data that you want to collect about these applications and things like that. We have had a customer with more than 5,000 applications decide to go with manual as well. So it depends.
Okay, perfect. Next question. Are there any tools in the market that will automatically migrate to SharePoint or other platforms?
No. If you wanted to press, I remember one of our customers asking, can I press a button or click a button tonight and come back after a week and everything is migrated to SharePoint? Sorry, there's nothing like that. No.
Yeah.
The primary
that would be
reason,
nice, but yes.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to have. In fact, he said, can you build one? I said, no, because the best practices on the target platform is what needs to be considered before you build it. So there are tools in the market to migrate data, and especially for organizations for whom data quality and data retention of data is important. It's important to invest in some kind of a tool. Quest is pretty big in the market, and do it right. However, for functionality, what we recommend is to do a functional analysis. For example, inside Maarga, we use something called a design analyzer that we built, which kind of pulls together the functionality or inside a Domino application and gives it as a report, an XML report, which our Domino people look at it and kind of create a functional analysis document. And then we ask the architect of the target platform to build it. We at least get the architecture right, because the key thing is if you mess that up, you're going to have kind of, sorry to use this word, if you put bad stuff in, you get bad stuff out. So it's important to make sure that there is a gap in between where you think about where you're going to move it, and when you move it, what you're going to do in the target platform, and it is conforming to the best practices of the target platform. So no, the answer is there's no press a button and get a migrated application out.
Right. Okay. Perfect. I think. Oh, he said thank you very much for that answer. He wishes you had a different answer. It would be nice to have something you can push and go, but it is a valid point which you bring up. If you don't follow the best practices of the target platform, yeah, you're not going to have great experiences. So I think that is the main key answer for that. Right. I don't think we have any further questions, but I'm sure people will if they start thinking about this a little bit more. So if you do, of course, reach out to Maarga Systems with these follow-up questions. Okay, so
you could always reach us. There's a phone number or a email address that you could always write to us on.
Perfect. I was just going to ask if you had a slide with the contact information, so you read my mind.
Good.
Okay. Well, again, guy in the presentation, very informative. I hope everyone in the audience has thought so as well. Please remember to click on the survey form, and that will help you to get some more information from Maarga for future webinars, and give some feedback about this one. We do appreciate your time, and so I think we're a little bit over time, but so Guy and Rika, I'll give you guys the last word, and then we'll end the webinar.
Thanks, Scott. So I would just leave you with this thought. Having clear insights into the application portfolio definitely will save you considerable time, money, and reduce your risk as you decide what to do with the notes portfolio. So that's what I would like to leave you with.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for today, and be on the lookout for the email with the video replay. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, or just reach out to Maarga. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, Scott. Have a great day, everyone.